Oh, we're rustling some Jimmies in this video. The type of Jimmies that may be going to the Indy 500 next year. So let's get into it. But first, big news out of the Harvest Grand Prix is the confirmation of IndyCar's 2021 schedule. It is exactly as Robin Miller reported it just a couple of days ago, and my thoughts virtually are unchanged. It sucks that the oval races have gone away and shrunken down to the point where there's only 4 amongst 3 tracks. It's unfortunate that Circuit of the Americas is gone as well. Certainly a one-and-done track is not something you wanted to see, and certainly there's an overabundance of road courses. There's no doubt about it, especially the repetitive nature of having 2 Indy GP races. Oops, all Indy road course. Thanks to Liam for that great meme over on Twitter. I already posted that in the community tab, but I had to post it again because I thought it was funny. Now, for those of you who are the short attention span viewers, or perhaps the ones that don't like me very much, you click on these videos, you get mad after about a minute, and then you leave. Gonna start out with some positives here, because there's a major positive in this schedule today that obviously we couldn't have known when this schedule leaked. And that is that 9 of the 17 races are on the big NBC. And I need to not understate this. This is a huge, huge positive for the series in 2021, especially with Jimmie Johnson coming over next year for at least the road courses, possibly more. You're going to want this series on network television as much as possible. And that is going to also raise the TV ratings, hopefully. As we've seen this year with the COVID restrictions, ironically creating opportunities for IndyCar to be on network more than they had been in years past, you've seen the ratings steadily uptick. The fact that less than half of the races are, or I guess half the races, let's just call it half the races, only half the races are on cable this next year, that is significant. Because if the TV ratings climb, sponsors will not only get interested, but the teams can approach sponsors and show them real data that is showing not only stability, but an increase. So from that perspective, you've got to commend NBC, IndyCar, and Roger Penske's team over at IndyCar for getting this done and getting 9 races on the network NBC. Especially because 2 of those races haven't been on network for quite a long time. And one of those races, well, actually both of these races, I have been advocating for being on network television for a very long time. And that is St. Pete, the season opener, finally getting on network television. This is something that's been long overdue. IndyCar needs a kick in the pants when it gets underway. St. Petersburg is a great event. It's usually pretty exciting. It's usually a made-for-TV event in some respects. So from that perspective, could not be happier that St. Pete is getting on network TV and the Grand Prix of Long Beach. That is just really great. The second jewel in the crown, I guess you could say, for an IndyCar driver is Long Beach, the second biggest race behind the Indianapolis 500. Certainly going to need a boost after the cancellation this year, and that boost is certainly in the television. Again, those are overwhelmingly positive things, I have to say. Another positive thing is the fact that there is actually a week gap after the after the Indianapolis 500 before the Detroit doubleheader. That's a good thing, not necessarily from a spectator standpoint, though I think having a little bit of room to breathe to promote the Indy 500 winner, having a week and a half to do that, isn't a terrible thing, believe it or not. I don't think you have to have a race right after the Indianapolis 500 in order to capitalize on the momentum that the Indianapolis 500 generates. But what this does do is allows the teams, the drivers, everybody involved in IndyCar to take some time off after a stressful and hectic month of May, especially now that there's a Texas Oval doubleheader at the beginning of that month. That is going to be extremely stressful for the teams. There's going to be a really marathon stint in there. I'm glad that they're not tacking Detroit on to the back of that. Now, there are some negatives. That means that the Detroit weekend becomes a 2-weekend affair where IMSA is no longer racing with IndyCar, which unfortunately means the value of the tickets, unless they do some sort of a deal, goes down for the spectators. It also means that IndyCar drivers can't run Le Mans next year, because I believe there's a clash there. So from that perspective, that's a disappointment from Belial moving. But from a team series perspective, I think it's a great move. The bad things are the gaps. Well, the bad things I haven't covered already. The gaps in the schedule. Between St. Pete and Barber, first race of the season on network television, fantastic. What's not so fantastic is having a 35-day break between race 1 and race 2 on the schedule. Oh man, over a month. I just wish there was something that could be done there. I know that NASCAR pushed them out of COTA, so that opportunity went out the window to run that race in that spot on the calendar. But man, that's a disappointment. And then that's not only the only one. There's another one between the rounds of Toronto and Nashville. That's a 29-day break. So not nearly as bad as at the beginning of the season, but honestly, I would argue that the beginning of the season needs as few gaps as possible in order to build up that momentum to the Indianapolis 500. Final thing I want to address is the oval thing. Because I've been seeing, I don't necessarily want to call it gaslighting, but there's definitely some people who are either concern trolling or they're coping with the fact that there aren't as many ovals on the schedule. The people who are saying that like oval events are dying outside of Indianapolis and there's no way you can promote them and nobody shows up to them, it's just baloney. Now, granted, a lot of it comes down to promotion and willingness for a track to participate in an IndyCar weekend. No doubt about it. But I think you look at the most recent race, which actually got an opportunity to have a race. I don't count Richmond because essentially that's become the Boston GP Electric Boogaloo. You look at Gateway and how that's been promoted, how that event has been handled, how there's activity on the track virtually the entire weekend. That is how you have to do oval races now. You can't be in a 60s mindset. Honestly, I've always said this about oval racing and really to a lesser extent the entirety of IndyCar racing. You have to take a little piece of that excitement from the Indianapolis 500 and bring it around to all the other races. You essentially need to host mini Indy 500s as the rest of your calendar. Have marching bands. If you can't have support races, have marching bands, have concerts. Have a big event feel. And the ovals that have survived, obviously Indianapolis 500, but Texas, Iowa up until this point no longer, and Gateway have all had major event feels. People have wanted to go to those races, they've wanted to be a part of them, and they've been excited about them coming up. You have to generate that sort of thing for ovals. And I'm sure they understand that. Again, if you want ovals on the calendar, be noisy. You're going to get some crap on social media for it. Doesn't matter. You need to make your voices heard. You need to let IndyCar know that, yes, you do want ovals. And I'm sure IndyCar wants ovals too. Don't get me wrong. But you as a fan can't get complacent. And, by the way, I totally agree. When there's another oval added to the calendar, put your money where your mouth is if at all possible. Go and support that event. Hopefully it's the Michigan 500, but we'll just have to wait and see. One other advantage of potentially having a short oval season is that Jimmie Johnson might be coming and running the whole season, not just the road courses. And for more on that, we head over to IndyCar Radio's Ryan Meyrehn because he had an interview with Jimmie Johnson during the Indy GP practice today, and he got some interesting facts out of him. Just spoke to Jimmie Johnson on IndyCar Radio, asked the Indy 500 question. He says the aero screen does change the equation, especially if he can get some oval testing in an IndyCar. Let the speculation begin. It's almost like he wrote that tweet expecting to throw it to me or something. Thanks, Ryan. But anyway, Jimmie Johnson in the Indy 500. Believe it or not, well, if you're a subscriber, you believe it because I've been saying it for a while, that I've thought all along that Jimmie Johnson is going to go IndyCar oval racing at some point. It may not even be next year, though the way things are headed and the answers he keeps giving keep getting softer and softer towards the possibility of running the Indianapolis 500 next year. That is something I think is absolutely on the table, and here's why. Jimmie Johnson, for the longest time, when talking IndyCars, it's ironic because if you've been following auto racing for probably the last 10, 15 years, you've seen Jimmie Johnson go from, because he used to be asked this all the time, when he was winning all these Brickyard 400s, people asked him if he had an IndyCar career in mind after NASCAR. And the original answer was a pretty soft no. It wasn't a hard no, but it was like, I like those people, I like those guys, I like following them. I probably wouldn't see myself there. As we've gotten further and further along, we've noticed him softening, and then it suddenly became, well, I might do road courses, or I might like a test. And then he got in that Formula One car with Fernando Alonso, and then it was suddenly like, yeah, I'd like to, when I get done with NASCAR, I'd like to go and run Indy cars and do a couple races. It was a couple of races. Then he had an opportunity to potentially test for McLaren. That didn't happen. Test for Ganassi, suddenly in the PR video, he's standing there going, yep, I'm going to run all the road courses next year. Meanwhile, because all this speculation has been going on, caused by Johnson testing Indy cars, the media has asked him, would you run ovals? Would you run the Indy 500? And I think it was Jenna Fryer who got the first real interesting answer out of Jimmie. And that answer was something along the lines of, I might want to try a short oval or something. Certainly the aero screen helped that a lot. But as soon as I heard that Jimmie was open to the possibility of running a short oval in IndyCar, well, then I start to think, at Gateway they're running 180, 190 miles an hour on the straight. Add 20, 30 miles an hour to that, you're not very far off of the speeds that are reached at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And that, to me, as soon as I heard that, as soon as it was no longer a hard no on the ovals, because for the longest time with Jimmie, it was a hard no on the Indy 500. He was like, look, my wife won't let me do it. I don't really want to do it myself. I mean, obviously it was a dream of his growing up, but as things have progressed, as the IndyCar itself has become a safer environment, certainly the head protection, the aero screen, that was a huge key to this. Absolutely. I keep saying that. You wouldn't have even gotten to Jimmie Johnson IndyCar test potentially without that aero screen. So everybody who poo-poos that, get out of here. I do think that Jimmie Johnson is coming next year. And the other reason I think that is because of the fact that you have that sponsorship question. I talked about this 2 weeks ago when it was announced that he's looking for sponsorship. Well, then I started to think, hang on a second. You're going to try to sell an IndyCar sponsorship essentially for the full season, but Jimmie Johnson's only going to run 14 out of 17 races. And somebody else is going to take the Indy 500 with the primary sponsorship that was sold for Jimmie Johnson to race the Indy cars. And Jimmie Johnson, you're honestly going to tell me that a sponsor is going to pony up the money for Jimmie Johnson to race Indy cars but not race in the Indy 500? It just seems like a stretch. Believe me, if it does transpire that way, I won't be necessarily surprised. But hearing those sorts of things, he's not only softening to this, he's genuinely considering it, if not already made a decision on whether or not he's going to do it. With only 4 oval events next year, it also makes that possibility of running for the entire championship, I think, a realistic possibility. If he is bad on the ovals, or if he, for some reason, can't do the ovals, he's still got a chance. He can bow out gracefully and not lose a ton of points in the championship. And from an IndyCar perspective, I think if there is an inkling, and there's clearly an inkling here, you've got to do everything in your power to make sure that Jimmie can get the test days that he wants, assuming, again, he wants it, to run an IndyCar on an oval, understand whether or not he wants to do it, and then once he makes a commitment, help him out in any way you can, get to that Indy 500. Because with 9 races on that network, NBC, with talk about oval tracks not having enough attendance, you want to talk about attendance at Texas? Start having Eddie Gossage promote that Jimmie Johnson's going to race an IndyCar there, and that's going to be his first oval start. Yeah, start thinking about that a little bit. So it's going to be exciting. It's going to be an exciting couple of months. Certainly, the schedule is a little bit of a disappointment, but the fact that Jimmie Johnson's coming next year will at least give us something to talk about virtually every week. And that's what it's all about. If you like talking about racing, you like talking about IndyCar, subscribe down below. Been kicking it as hard as I can the last couple of weeks. I hope you guys have been enjoying that. Certainly the subscribers have been going up quickly, so I appreciate that. We'll see you in the next video. Let me know what you think about Jimmie Johnson potentially running the Indy 500 down in the comments section below.